My name is Mike Waller. Welcome everybody to the CoLab. Thank you for coming to our first AI Tech Slam. Today we're going to look at AI technology and how it changes your life and different ways to use it. This is a very rapid summary of some of the latest things some of our colleagues are using, and we're going to kick it off with our CIO, Rob Caffey.
What I did for this example was to try to do something to demonstrate the utility of using an AI tool in design work for applications of business processes. But I wanted to demonstrate something that I could do that was very quick. So I'm not going to do it in real time for you, but I'm going to show you something I did about 10, 15 minutes ago. This morning I had 2 different phone calls with people talking to me about the issue that we had with Canvas last week. Anybody have problems with Canvas last week? A couple people, yeah. So there was a security incident where some data was released. Well, we're still trying to figure out exactly what that was. But then the hacker team that did that took the system down entirely on Thursday, 3:00 p.m. on Thursday, and it was down. And we started having conversations about what if this doesn't come up right away? What if this is down for weeks on end? And we talked about, we wanted to have sort of a backdoor, a backup of some of the data that instructors could use to get in and see information in their gradebook or contact their students. And currently, most of what we have that's in Canvas is just down. We have some backup things that we can do, directing them through other systems, but Canvas itself was just down. So I went into Claude, my Claude agent, here, and this is a command line interface for Claude that I use, so not very exciting looking because it's just text-based. Claude is a tool from Anthropic that uses a number of different large language models on the back end and creates a command line interface for interacting with it. But it's really useful in that I can train it with using markdown files, I can give it specific information about our institution and what we're doing in some of our processes, and that keeps that context in its memory when it is executing these things. So I just went in and said, I want you to help me design a very basic system. Will allow us to programmatically pull certain data out of Canvas. And I suggested using Data 2, which is one of the data connectors, and I talked about some specific things that I wanted to do, and it just is a zero shot. I just put it in and go, and this is what it came up with. And it came up with a series of questions that it asked me, what kind of data do you want to have in here? And it asked me a number of questions, and then it said that it made a couple of diagrams for me, and you can see that that's all in there. So let me show you what it output now. Because we have in Anthropic, we've got So this is the downside of having just done it 10 minutes ago, is that being able to see it is a bit of a problem. But so this is a high-level diagram of the way the Claude agent works. So I have a main agent that I create, and I ask it to do something, and it will spin up separate shell windows on my computer, and each one has its own different context window, and you can create several different agents that will work together to do different things for you. And the impressive thing here is not so much what it came up with, but the fact how quickly it did it. In this, I want to go back to my, sorry, when we do this in the future, we're going to have so I can see that and this at the same time. I asked it to create a high-level business explanation of what this thing was that we needed to do. So we want to create a backup here. So this created a document for me, output it directly to Zoom Docs, which is part of the Zoom Workplace platform. And the Claude has an MCP server, which is Model Context Protocol, which means I can, those agents that I create can actually use tools from within, they're available in the APIs from different systems. And in this case, I used Zoom API. and made a call to it. And I just said, take all this stuff that we're doing, the designs you're working on in Markdown, and put them into a Zoom doc directly. So that's what you're looking at here. This is a high-level sort of business case for what that looks like. Talked about the design principles, and I'll share this online if anybody wants to see it afterwards. But then the other thing that I asked it to do, which I thought was interesting, was, sorry, I'm gonna have to, is to do the actual technical architecture document for me. So that's what this document is. And it actually created the technical architecture of this application and how it wants to do it, including creating a number of documents. And these diagrams are created using Mermaid, which is a format where you can create a text version of a business process diagram and put it out here. And it created a bunch of these for me, and they're all embedded directly in this document. So one last thing that I want to show you with this, again, sorry, being able to see both of these at the same time. In the Zoom whiteboard, I just copied and pasted these diagrams, each of them, into this whiteboard. So now I can go in to a meeting, and there's a diagram here that talks about the high-level architecture of this application. And it shows where we need to do that, where the data flows need to go, and what functions we might need to create using the different things. And I had told it in my prompt that I wanted to do it in an AWS environment. So it made a few assumptions about that. But then it went on to do some other diagrams for me here. For example, what does the nightly sync process look like? What would the data flows look like and the data elements that would flow back from which place in which order? One of the things that I think is really interesting about this is now that this is created, I can go in here and I can tell Zoom Workplace that I want to interact with this diagram, not as a Mermaid diagram, but as a native diagram in here, and it will just convert it, and then I can drag stuff around and I can redesign the process, and then I can feed that new process back through Claude, which will capture all of that for our design meeting. So what I did here is in about 5 minutes, I created a high-level diagram to address a problem that we were specifically having right now. This is not done. It didn't build a prototype. It didn't write any code. I didn't ask it to do that. But what I asked it to do is talk about what is a potential solution using the tools that we have at our disposal, and we can use that as a way to front-end a discussion with our design team to go forward. So now when we sit down, rather than having a blank slate, we have some actual content to talk about for design. Wow. All right. Woo! That's it.
Very impressive. All right. Connor, do you want to come on up if you're ready?
I just wanted to contrast a little bit about kind of your approach when you're using AI tools. Instead of getting into any specific AI tool, I just wanted to give kind of a tip in general as you kind of move through skill layers, I would say, in using AI. Instead of thinking about using chats primarily, I think it's also helpful to think about the work that we do in AI as a project, something that you build on over time. So instead of just hopping into like the free version of ChatGPT or whatever is available out there, think about having an account in one of these tools so that you can kind of invest time and expertise into whatever it is you're working on. So, you know, you can just go into the free version, have a chat, you ask this really smart tool for some advice, it gives you the advice, and then you move on. But if you think of these things more in terms of ongoing projects, whether it's a class or a project at work that could be going on for months, I just wanted to do a little bit of compare and contrast between what you get with an anonymous prompt versus what you get with a logged in version of a tool, and then what you get with a logged in version of the tool when you've invested months into building that knowledge. I think one of the things that you get out of that is that the AI tool can, to an extent, start to model your work style. You know, you tell it, don't do fancy formatting in Word docs. Give me information in summary tables. highlight things in green versus red when something is a problem versus when it's going well. And if you've got that project built up over months, it's going to remember all of that information, and it's going to continue it going forward. And as you upload documents to it, that's another thing to consider with your AI tool selection. Does it allow you to upload PDFs and spreadsheets? Does it allow you to upload, these various formats, or do you have to get the text and copy and paste it? And I think contextually for the work that you're doing as well, so if you're in an organization and you've got feedback from like meeting notes, you can say what went well, what didn't go well, where there were lots of questions. Now you don't have to remember all of that. You start building that up over the months, and you're not going to be able to do all of that as easily if you just log in one time for a chat. And in a sense, that output, in a very limited sense, kind of starts to represent your work style. And then I think, everybody's going to have these tools, in the future, and you're going to still see how people use them differently. And I think if you're using kind of standalone anonymous chats, there's going to be limited usefulness in what that can give you. So taking this different approach of how do I organize longer term endeavors in a tool can help you get that maximum output. So as you start, internships or jobs or projects for school, especially if you change, to a more identifiable major where you've got kind of a building of coursework, ways of organizing your notes, and also if you wind up switching tools, be thinking of how you're going to export all of that work that you've invested in your AI projects. So if you've got 100 Word documents, do you have those saved someplace where you can easily upload it and kind of start again if those tools don't necessarily provide exports? So the prompt that I gave it, just in this simple example, is knowing what you know about product 1 and product 2 and the topic, write a testing plan for a community college with a focus on what is most important in the business process. So instead of worrying too much about the tool or what the products were and what the subject matter was, the results were, not surprisingly, pretty significantly different. Just opening up the anonymous version, you don't log in, it's basic. It did a pretty good job. It gave general advice, and it was good advice. It was very helpful. It had lots of things I wouldn't have thought of. But logging in and using higher levels of product features, it produced a matrix spreadsheet with about 25 test results. And then for the project that I had been building over several months with lots of uploaded notes, lots of manuals, lots of links to documentation sites, it had 50 tests, and they were contextual. And what's more is I took the original thing that it produced, loaded it back in and said, compare the two, and it found more than 20 differences between what it produced without project context and what it produced with it. So more of a tips and tricks to think about how you use those tools. And if you like using the free versions and doing a chat and then closing it, I would just point out you're kind of giving up a lot of your knowledge that you've built by typing in those prompts and figuring out how to ask those questions. And if you can find a tool or find a place to store your prompts and your ideas, it's a way to kind of build that knowledge up and get more advantage from the product as time goes on.
Connor, is it possible to export a chat from one tool to another?
I've never tried it, but I would hope that they have that feature. Yeah. Rob says yes.
Yeah, I just helped somebody the other day move their contacts and stuff from ChatGPT into Claude. And
Really? Like your entire chat history?
If the tool keeps your chat history, you can do that. But what you can do is you can just have it stored. There's probably if it has a memory, it's got certain context that it just keeps things that it thinks are important about your conversations, and you can export that.
Good question. Others? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming out today. My name is Adam Kaler. I'm with IS. I'm excited to kind of talk about some of these things with AI today. So specifically, I had initially what I was going to do, and then I'm going to tell you why I decided not to present that, and I kind of made a change last minute. Okay, so I want to explain this a little bit. So my first thought here was, how can we use AI to bring together all the different modalities of communication that we have? I'm sure we've all been those situations of awkward times. Maybe we saw somebody said, "Hey, did you see that Teams chat I sent you, or the Zoom message, or voicemail?" And it's something that I just overlooked. I didn't have it installed on my phone or didn't update, right? And so what I did was I tried to find a way that I can keep track of priorities and important items that come in. And so by using different AI tools, we can actually link together our different accounts, and then it will scan all those. So the prompt that I had was, to look through all the different communication tools and paths that I have as a JCCC employee, and they give me a list of priorities. The reason I couldn't show it up here is because, there was some stuff from HR that I probably didn't want to share, stuff from different employees and stuff that wouldn't be probably a great idea. So I did pivot, but I want to talk about how that is a great use case, and it's a good way to kind of keep up and then understand how folks are reaching out to you. So what I did do was I've showed this before to some other different folks. I actually took all of our ticket data from our ITSM system, and I put that through Claude, and one of the things I found has been really useful is I ask these different tools to look at our data sets and then create dashboards, right? Or find interesting info about each of them. And so we've all seen, Excel spreadsheets that kind of talk about aspects here. But just from a quick, and this was a 45-second prompt, just wanted to share the dashboard that it created. So this pretty robust. And so this shows total tickets, right? It shows ones that were open. This is, of course, over the past, I think, year and a half or so. And then one of the neat things about it is it shows the ebb and flow of tickets that we have over time. And it doesn't just stop there. So this also shows the volume of tickets specifically, the different teams that things are assigned to, and then the amount of time that it takes for resolution for different types of tickets. Now, this is getting pretty deep in the nerd knobs, right, in terms of how we look at these things. But I've found that when I ask AI to look at these data sets, there's typically one or two things that I didn't think about how to frame something that way or have a conversation that way. On a personal note, I use a very similar AI tool to help with my wife and I have 4 kids. Our youngest has special needs, and so to help kind of graph how he's coming along in some of his studies and some of his impacts, I load that information in there so we can try to find trends. And so I think those are, I warn folks to do that at your own, understanding what you're putting in there, right? So, but I think using these kind of tools to get some of those aspects out of the data usually shows us a different way of thinking about things that we didn't have before. So yeah, that was my kind of quick presentation there. Any questions on that?
What tool are you using?
I'm using Claude for this one. I have used we had a kind of internal AI slam with IS here a few months ago, and so for that one, it was way nerdier. I actually took I made a music player for retro video game files. Okay, we're taking a deep breath, right? And so, not a lot to do on a Saturday night. And so, the cool thing about that is you can actually pull in the audio files from these games. I digress. And so, the point of this was I wanted to show for that one how Claude could make a tool like that and what the difference is from ChatGPT. And I think at that point in time, just doing it kind of like that, the Claude didn't work, but ChatGPT did work. But the aesthetic differences, like Claude kind of lives in this dark mode world, so which I think it's a developer programming tool, so you see that quite a bit. So also I will say one of the neat things about Copilot, and we are all licensed for Copilot within the chat. You can find these documents within your OneDrive or your SharePoint, and it does a pretty good job. Once you create documents like this, you can say, okay, prepare this information based on my communications with XYZ. And it will actually pull out data from your communications with them and then highlight those points in an interactive chart like this. Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you. Thanks, everybody.
All right, hope everybody's learning or getting some great ideas on how to use AI here. So again, my name is Mike Waller, and I'm going to show you a real basic application that I used recently. So the tool I'm currently using is Anthropic's Claude. I love it. So here was my situation. I was asked to DJ a private event, and I had done some DJing a while back, but was completely out of it. And if you know anything about DJing, one of the tricks in mixing music is to have a very good library. It's kind of like a chef having good knives. So if you have a good library, you can sync up music and you can put it in key and do some fancy stuff. So I needed a good library. One of my friends said, "Hey, I will invite you to this site for DJs, and you can buy a month access." I was like, "Okay, that's great." So they had. Oh, let me back up. I had 6 weeks to do this, and so I had a little bit of a time crunch there. So I got invited and bought access to this library, but then I found out there was 96,000 files, and I didn't have time to go through and pick things, and you never know what people are going to want. So I wanted them all. So the situation was get 96,000 files. So I looked at their website, and I found out I was in luck because every link was just a sequential number. So I didn't actually have to scrape the website. So that was that was good. So then I decided I was going to just download them all. And on Mac, I have a tool called Downy, which is a download manager. And so I was going to do batches of 1,000. And the first task I gave Claude was write a CSV file of links based on numbers 1 to 1,000 and so forth. And I'll put that into Downy and then download them. And even that's a lot of work. And so I put that in Claude. It wrote a script to generate that. It was fantastic. But then I found out doing it in batches of 1,000, it would import it and it would get stuck, and I had to keep on checking it. So then working with Claude, it said, "Hey, why don't you there's a way we can talk directly to this download manager, and I can individually feed it these file links." So I said, "Okay, how do we do that?" And now, if you're on a Mac used to use Bash for some scripting, and there's some other things you can do. And now they use something called Z Shell, which I don't know a lot about. So I said, "Okay, help me write that." And so with Claude, we wrote a Python script that, or actually a Z Shell script that would send a link to my download manager. Then it would wait. Then it would send another one. And then when it got done with the 1,000, it would actually go back and check it. And so that was, Closetino was great. So that worked. I met my deadline, gave me 2 weeks to practice, and that's how I used AI. Any questions? Well, thank you. Yes.
So you used Claude for this, and then you read the script. You just ran locally on terminal?
Yep. Yeah, that's right. In Terminal, I ran the script, and that was just shell. And then I used a Python script to sort through and then count them and see if there was anything I missed or that Downy didn't get.
BPM was one, but you have like adjacent artists or mood or are there other like attributes that at one time there was I think it was one of the precursors to Spotify that had like a music DNA, like they had different attributes that they would track and they would talk about that could be used by algorithms to make like
Yes. So it's pretty straightforward. You have artist title. You do have a grouping. Even if you're familiar with MP3 tags, there's not a lot of them that all the big DJ tools use. And there's that part of it. They've the big software, Serato, Virtual DJ, etc. They've kind of, I think, left to the artist. Most of it's like key, tempo. Then there's a few other things that live it. But that's any other questions? Great. Well, thank you for attending our first AI Slam, and we'll see you next time.